Welcome in, everybody, to the Genesis Invitational breakdown. Got a familiar course. Just talked about it a couple weeks ago with the change from Riviera back down to Torrey Pines with the fires and everything a little north from here. So how are you feeling this week? We got the crew back together, so feeling good about this week, Chris?
Yeah, it's nice to be back on the show. Things have been kind of nuts for me lately in terms of the extreme weather here in central Canada. Minus 45 wind chills and freezing pipes, and I'm hauling water for our restaurant, and it's been absolutely crazy. So happy that I finally have a Tuesday where there's no actual chaos going on around me, where I can jump on and talk some golf and get ready for this week. And like you said, we're back to Torrey Pines, which 3 weeks ago we were there for the Farmers Insurance Open. The only difference this week is we're just going to be on the South Course, which, like we discussed for the Farmers Insurance Open, is an absolute beast. We're at like 7,765 yards, and I believe the North Course was rated at something like 7,150. So there's like a 600-yard difference between those two courses. So instead of having that little break for one of the first 2 days, golfers get the South Course the whole entire weekend, or the whole entire weekend. Yeah. It's not exactly a no-cut event this week. It's the third signature event of the season. And this is one of the, I think they call it like not player organized, but player centric signature events. There's three of them on here. Player hosted. Thank you. And with that, we do have a cut this week. So the top 50 in ties and anyone within 10 strokes of the lead after Friday's second round will be cut. And then those final 50, again, will play the weekend. So a little bit different in terms of this signature event. So there'll be up to 22 players. I think the field has 72 players. So we're going to see that the most 22 players being cut. And, it could be as little as, 10. It depends on how the scoring goes here. But usually we see some discrepancy with the long and very hard course. So we'll get into some of the statistics and stuff like that we're looking for this week. But is there any feelings that you have with this going back to Torrey Pines? Do you think it's an advantage for, like, a lot of the players in this field never played Torrey Farmers Insurance Open earlier in the year, and some of them haven't played it in a few years in terms of the top players, that's like looking at Scheffler, McIlroy, both of them haven't played in 3 or 4 years respectively, the Farmers Insurance Open. Tom Kim never played the Farmers Insurance Open. Russell Henley, it's been a long time since he's played it. So we got a lot of these players that haven't played it. Do you think there's an advantage for the guys that played the Farmers Insurance Open 3 weeks ago going into this week?
Yeah, I think a little bit. My biggest thing this week is trying to figure out how different the course is going to play this time around. Looks like there's going to be a little bit of weather coming in Thursday, Friday. I don't know if you had that pulled up. I think I saw that.
Yeah, I got that right here.
We could jump right into there. That. So it looks like going to be some rain, pretty windy on Thursday, especially there. And then it kind of calms down over the weekend. So I'll be interested to see how the course plays compared. I mean, it was pretty firm and fast from on the South Course over the weekend a few weeks ago. So I think that's going to be a little bit different, at least the first 2 days. And if you think back to the 2024 Farmers that Pavon won, that was one that was kind of similar to that as to what we're going to see Thursday and Friday, I think, where they got a lot of rain, more receptive greens, but more, lush rough that it's kind of hard to hit out of, harder to hit out of than it already is here. And we talk about that every year when we come to Torrey with the rough. I know that was one of the first years we did shows together. One of your key stats for Torrey was rough proximity. And we always talked about love to have guys that are longer hitters because they're hitting wedges, or maybe not wedges, but mid irons into these greens, as opposed to shorter hitters who are hitting longer irons, and everybody's going to miss fairways to some extent here. So I'd rather have, like you were saying, you'd rather have the 150 to 175 in than 200 in with out of the rough here. So definitely going to favor, and we can get into the stats, but I think even this forecast is going to favor the longer hitters a little bit more. So I tilted some of the weights when I updated my model on the sheet to show that driving distance, strokes gained off the tee. Of course, want to have, approach is always going to be big here, like it is most every week, but you're looking at mid to long irons for the most part. It's not like a Pebble Beach where the wedges, it's just a wedge fest. So definitely similar to a few weeks ago, but like you said, there are a lot of guys in this field that haven't played here before, and I think we see it just played differently. I think we see kind of both editions for for this event. I think we're going to see the more receptive greens, but the wind up a little bit first couple days and then calm down. I don't know that it dries out a whole lot and becomes firm and fast by Sunday, but we'll see. What are your thoughts on key stats for the week?
Yeah, always. I mean, when you're talking the second longest course on tour, driving distance, and something I look at, narrowing that driving distance down even more is carry distance, especially if we're going to have some wet conditions. Look like most of that rain is going to come Thursday night, going into Friday, early Friday morning. So Friday could be a lot softer. And if you're not going to get that rollout on the firm and fast fairways, maybe like we've seen, then that carry distance is definitely key. So that's something I'll look at a little bit, is that carry distance in relation to that driving distance. But something I found really interesting looking back at the Farmers Insurance Open 3 weeks ago, driving distance was my number one stat. Now, only 6 of the 14 players who finished top 10 were actually above average overall in the tournament, versus the field in terms of distance off the tee. I know it's a small sample size, but it was really surprising to me to only see that many players above the actual field average in terms of the driving distance. To me, a little bit more important, and something I've been mixing in a little bit more into these models for the long courses, is total driving. Now I have that on the sheet, on my little research sheet that I've got here right now, and pretty much what I'm looking at in terms of total driving. You can see I've got the overall rank, and it just kind of looks at the rank of total driving, and then distance, and then accuracy, putting that together. So that's definitely something we're going to talk about here. I think how we're going to go through it this week is maybe look at some guys that maybe have done course history, which will be the Farmers Insurance Open. Now, take that with a little bit of a grain of salt in terms of one round has always been played at the Farmers Insurance Open on the North Course, but generally the guys that are making the cut are playing 3 rounds on the South Course. And I believe Torrey Pines, I'd have to go back and double check that information. And I think it comes from John Hasselbauer. I'd have to remember. I kind of forget. I think it's the Rabbit Hole or something with Betts Golf, where Torrey Pines is somewhere right around that top 10 in terms of course history, predictability. So that's something that's very important. So I think, like I said, you kind of off the air, I think a really important way to look at this tournament, maybe look at the field instead of going through the salaries, is to look at some guys that have done well in course history, some guys that have done well in form, coming in with good form, and some guys that kind of fit the stats model that we've discussed. Because I agree with you that driving is up there. I'm only adding total driving, a little tweak to that. And then, like you said, approach is very important. Possibly some of that rough proximity is going to come in. Now, the rough looks crazy. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos on Twitter this week of some of the players in their practice rounds, but it's like one hop and that ball's disappearing in a lot of the places in the rough. So I really do think accuracy is going to be key. Now, if you're not rostering a player and you're kind of deciding on a player that maybe isn't top 20, top 40 in terms of driving distance or carry distance on tour, you really want to make sure that they have really good long irons in terms of the ranges. Now, if I slide over on the sheet here, what I'm looking at and keying in on is guys in the 175 to 200 and the 200 plus proximity ranges. So if you got a really accurate guy that doesn't have a ton of distance, we want to make sure that he's up there in terms of his long iron proximity as well. So we'll look at some of the guys that stand out in terms of our stats models as well. But yeah, I think we can definitely start with course history here this week. Now I'm just going to sort my tab here on the sheet by course history averages over the last 10. We'll talk about a few guys here at the top, and some of them are obviously, like I said, I mentioned the top 10, right around the top 10 in terms of predictability with the course history at Torrey Pines. So that's why you see four of my core players coming in here, top six in the average in terms of course history. Adam Scott, he's another player. Him, same with Rory McIlroy. They both haven't played here over the last 4 years, but they both come back to Torrey Pines with some good course history. Scott with a second in 2019, 10th in 2021. Rory McIlroy, fifth in 2019, third in 2020, and 16th in 2021. So I definitely like both of those guys at the top of my course history ranks this week, and talk about Rory McIlroy a little bit more. He is number one in my own personal model in terms of my own rankings, just simply because, I mean, we've seen his performance. He's coming off a win. His total driving was absolutely amazing. Now, the reason he's maybe only 22 in my overall rankings in my model here is just because the stats, if actually on the PGA Tour, when we update the stats on the sheet, he doesn't qualify. He hasn't played enough rounds going into this week. But before that, he did. So his winning week with those stats is not included in his stats on the sheet. And they would all be obviously up, up, up. Um, in terms of his rankings with the statistics, just because he played so well at Pebble Beach. He was absolutely amazing in terms of his ball striking and his tee to green, and the putter was on. So seeing all that together with course history definitely has him as my favorite golfer. But are there any other of these guys that interest you in terms of this course history this week?
Yeah, I think Adam Scott's definitely at that price tag. I think he piques my interest. Good form, sparing history, but good history here. And I'm sure he played. I don't know what his finishes were in the U.S. Opens here, but I'm sure he played in those as well. Pendrith is a guy that I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but I mean he just played well here a few weeks ago, and he's overall been playing really well. Ninth here back a year ago as well. I think he's a really good option. Jake Knapp, who they threw into the field too at min price 6K.
He's 6K. I gotta update that.
Yeah, so those guys also they never get like crazy ownership either. And like you said, it's not a no cut event, but pretty close to it when the 10 shot rule comes into play, probably. Especially if this place plays tougher with the wind and the rough grown out a little bit and things on the first couple days. It's going to play longer, which would favor a guy like him over the first couple days for sure. So if he can get 4 rounds, I really like him. Third here in 24 when it was in those conditions, like I talked about, a little wetter. So I like that you can fit in. I don't know if you can do it, but he would be an interesting one to play like Rory and Scotty together. I don't know that would all exactly even still fit, even with Knapp. But if it would, the only issue that I would have with it is that I talk about this sometimes. It's like when you get to playing certain groups of like that combination, a lot of lineups that have Rory and Scotty are going to have Knapp, even if their ownerships aren't that much. It's like I equate that to something like playing one of the cheap captains in NFL Showdown or something. That if you play one of them and just jam all the top guys in, everybody has the same or similar team. So even though your captain's like 1 or 2% owned, that 1 or 2% of lineups are all almost the same, and you almost end up with more dupes. But PGA is a little bit different. But I would be interested to see what the I haven't played around with builds enough to kind of see, but it looks like you could definitely do it. You would have 69.33 left for 3 spots, so you'd have to play another 6K, and then you could get back into the sevens. I don't know that I'll end up doing that, And I think it's an interesting conversation when you get to the top because, like you said, Rory does have good form coming off the win, good course history. It seems like it was this place would fit him to a T, and it has to some extent. He's a big discount from Scotty. Scotty's coming off the Sunday where he just completely gave up over the back nine. I've never seen him do that before. And of course, when I need him to not do that, he does. He does it. I don't. That's another thing we didn't touch on last week, but I had a massive sweat for the $200 single entry. I was like winning $50K.
Going into the final.
Yeah. So from towards the end of the day on Saturday, all the way through like the first half of the round on Sunday, I was winning the $50K or even more maybe of the half. And then Scotty just starts giving up. And even if he would have played decently, I would actually finish second the way I do the math. But I ended up falling down to fifth. So still a really good outcome. It always sucks when you're that close to winning a big one. But it was it was 7,500, so we'll take it and move on.
A disappointing 7,500.
Yeah, that's
totally.
That's what I keep telling myself. It's like you can't be disappointed about something like that, no matter what. So anyway, back to this week. But yeah, so I'll be interested to see those two guys' ownership because the massive discount, the form. Favors Rory. The price favors Rory. The course fit slightly, I think, favors Rory this week. So does he push the same type of ownership of Scotty? Because Scotty's not going to be what he was last week, 60, 65%. I mean, he's going to be 30 to 35, I would say. And I think Rory could push the same type of ownership. So I still haven't made a decision on that one for this week. I don't know what your thoughts on that are. But yeah, I'll give that one back to you and see what your thoughts at the very top there are.
I hate fading Scotty, but he doesn't this is one of his worst course history that he has on tour is Torrey Pines South specifically. As you can see, he's way down in the model with the 20th in 2022 and 2 missed cuts in those 3 years that he played the Farmers Insurance Open. So I could definitely see why he maybe didn't play in 23 and 24 or even this year, the Farmers Insurance Open. But at that price gap from 12.3 to 10.9 for Rory, I'm definitely on Rory. And I have Scotty Scheffler. I'm in a season-long FSGA league, and I somehow pulled the first overall pick, which just made it super easy to go after Scotty Scheffler, even coming off his holiday season hand injury. So I'm cheering for Scotty because of that season-long league. But in terms of DFS this week, just that price gap plus everything that Rory's got going on versus Scotty, I'm all over Rory, and I'm going to be fading Scheffler again in terms of DFS. I like that mid range. Like you mentioned Pendrith. I was on him for the Farmers. He got another top 10 there. I'm going to be on him probably for another outright bet, but I also like ladder betting. And if anyone is not familiar with ladder betting, it's something that sometimes we'll do in terms of football props, where you'll bet a player over 20 yards and over 30 yards and over 40 yards and over 50 yards. You just keep laddering that bet. And if he goes over on all of them, you're having a really productive day. And if he goes over on, a few of them. So with Pendrith, I like betting him outright, top 5, top 10. Top 20 is kind of pushing it with his number that he's getting right now, but definitely like those three. He just kind of fits the model, like you said, in terms of back-to-back top 10s, in terms of the course history. T60 in 2023 isn't outstanding, but in his first trip, 2022, he was T16. He's got back-to-back top 10s overall in terms of his form. We're going to talk about some form soon. We're kind of mixing up the course history and form, I guess, which kind of works. Just looking at things a little bit different. But someone we haven't talked about who's going to be a core play for me, again, in the value range, is Sam Stevens. He's kind of been up and down in terms of his form. overall, but he does mix in those top finishes, and he's coming off a second place finish here at Torrey Pines at the Farmers Insurance Open, T43 last year at the Farmers, and then T13 in 2023 as well. So he stands out at 7,600 for me as well. I really like that course history. Someone that also stands out, and I looked at the model using Fantasy National Golf. Tony Finau stands out. He's got a lot of top tens in here. He's got 6 top tens in his last 9 trips, even though he's got some missed cuts in here. But looking at the overall stats, last 24 rounds on just Torrey Pines South, he is second in strokes gained total behind Tiger, first in tee to green. So he's right up there. He's top 10, actually top 8 in both par 4 and 5 scoring. I just don't know with his form and his price at 8,200. I don't know if I'm quite there yet on him. I think his ownership, he's going to be a player that always seems to be high at the Farmers. So I think his ownership might be up there. So I'm not really sure where I'm going to go there. But in terms of course history, he's definitely someone that stands out. A couple other guys I got highlighted here in terms of the course history. Keegan Bradley, with his ball striking, fits the model at the Farmers. He's maybe not one that, what is he averaging in terms of distance? So he's 304. So it's, I think, average on tour right now is right around 302, 303. So he's just slightly above. But what stands out for him in terms of that ball striking is he's 61.8% driving accuracy and 85.5% good drive percentage, which is kind of looking at when they miss the fairway. It's a combination of when they hit the fairway and when they miss the fairway and their greens in regulation when they do miss the fairway. So it kind of gives you an idea of guys that maybe aren't super accurate, which he kind of is, but when he is missing those fairways, he's still hitting the greens in regulation, which is really good to see. And he is 14th in this field in terms of the total driving that I'm looking at. So Keegan Bradley definitely fits. Sung J M, he's got 3 top 6 finishes in his last 4 trips to Torrey Pines. And then Colin Morikawa, he missed the cut in his last trip last year, but he was T3 in 2023 and 2021. So he might be a player. If you do actually think that Scotty Scheffler, now I just want to go ahead and sort this again by pricing. We got Morikawa 4th here, right behind Justin Thomas. But if you feel that Scotty Scheffler is really going to get that 30-35%, that makes me excited. Because I think Rory McIlroy is going to be very close to the number 1, probably number 2. I think those guys are going to be up there. But I think you may get away with Colin Morikawa, maybe in that 20% range. He might be one of those pivots off of McIlroy and Scheffler, because I think Justin Thomas also is going to take some of that ownership in that top range. So if I'm looking at that top range specifically, I feel that it's going to be McIlroy, Thomas, or Scheffler very close, and then Morikawa. So if Morikawa ends up being 5 to 8% less in terms of ownership, I think that could be a really good pivot as well. What do you feel about Morikawa?
Yeah, I think he's definitely a solid play. Makes a lot of sense. Solid start to the year in Hawaii, and then Pebble was all right. It wasn't anything to write home about, but 17th, we'll take it. 10K, I think definitely the course fits him. Long iron savant when he's on, we'll call him. So definitely, I'm fine with that play for sure. And we saw him play well a couple of years ago here. Do you think everybody's done with Ludwig?
Because it feels like he's really dropping off.
Yeah, this place is. This place is perfect for him. He was a couple weeks ago. He was leading. I know it was coming off around at the North Course, and then played well to get himself in contention for the weekend, and then got sick. And I wrote that off. He plays the next week. Doesn't seem like he was fully back. I wouldn't be. If I had the flu or whatever it was he had, so, and he kind of, what did he end up doing? Did he
at the Farmers? It was 42nd.
Yeah, so he fell so far off. See, so over the weekend, and then after that, he played like 1 round in WD. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if people are just done with him, but he comes back to a place where he was 9th in 24 in the rain rainy type year. I just keep calling it that because I feel like it's closer conditions to what it will be this week
For sure.
to start. And then he was right there in contention going into the weekend and got the flu. So think of him, total driver, great, driver of the ball. He can get the ball in play, get it where you need to be. 9,800. I mean, this place fits him to a T. It's just a matter of, is he going to snap right back to the form that he was in coming into that? I'm still willing to give him the pass of being sick, but we'll
especially
see.
if he's coming at an ownership discount for sure. It feels like a terrific GPP play when people are starting to go against a player like that we know has the talent. Like you said, he fits the model, so I'm with you there. He's looking at the last 24 rounds. He is, I believe, ninth in driving distance gained. So when we're looking at that, I'm looking, instead of the proximity from 200 plus, I'm looking at more that 175 to 200 range. And when we're looking at guys that are kind of averaging the 310 plus in terms of driving, and he's top 20 in that long iron proximity. He scores on the par fives recently. The only thing that's really let him down, and the big reason for that, is getting sick, because he lost 6 strokes at the Farmers with that T42 3 weeks ago. So that -6 in terms of the putting really drove him down. But overall, he's not a bad putter. I think that was maybe like his second worst putting performance of his professional career, and nothing else other than the Travelers where he lost -7 strokes last summer. There's nothing even close to losing that many strokes in a tournament.
And
So
think
that's
of it,
not the norm.
if you're that sick, what's going to go? The concentration on
Yeah,
putting, you're just not going to be able to do it. So,
and it's not the easiest place to putt at either.
No, yeah. So you want a course fit start. Rory and Ludwig at the top is that's an interesting one. Bob says, could we add total driving to the sheet? We could look into that. That might be one of the stats on PGA's site, I think.
It is. So
That we could
I've
add
got
in
it
there.
here. I realized actually while I was adding it before the show, I've got it on my copy of the sheet. I thought I was adding it to the main sheet, but realized I made a copy. So I've actually got it added to my copy, but I'll go ahead and add it to the main sheet going into either later tonight or first thing in the morning. I will transfer that over so that you can kind of see where they rank total driving and add it to the model as well. So thanks for that, Bob.
Yeah, and we'll look into adding that for the future, because I think that is a good stat to look at in a lot of cases, with to kind of wrap around distance and accuracy together, and then have good drive and that. Bob also says about the ownership tab. Bob, we just have that for when the sheet or for when the slate locks.
Tournament starts.
I add that in there. It's hidden right now. But once the tournament starts, I go in and pull the CSVs and put in for the single entry, the double up, and the main GPP, the ownership side by side. So, I'll have that on Thursday morning this week.
Yeah, we don't really predict ownership. I know we used to have a deal with FanShare, which they're out of business now. But we don't really pull in and project any ownership. We talk about it. We kind of, instead of getting down to like exact numbers on what we think ownership's going to be for players, we just kind of look at how we rank them. And if there's going to be a big gap between players in the same price range, that's maybe where you can take advantage in terms of GPP. But like we've been talking about all season, 2 to 5% between two players in the same range isn't really a big deal. Don't go ahead and make decisions based off of that. Pick a golfer that you think that you like more, that you're more comfortable with rostering, and kind of go from there. So that's kind of the way we look at ownership. But the total driving thing, I wanted to have a look at that actually, and the reason I put it on the sheet is because we wanted to get into stats, and I wanted to talk about guys that maybe fit the stats model. And because we've been talking about total driving so much, let's go ahead and talk about that. So I've actually sorted the sheet now by, it's just 2025 stats so far this year. So it's a fairly small sample size, but a lot of these players have played 5 to 10 events. So we can look a lot into it, I think, and kind of use that. Yeah. What's that?
Gary Woodland.
Oh yeah, you see Woody up there for sure. So Daniel Berger, we talked about him. I remember in our first tournament back doing a video this year, we talked about Daniel Berger, and is this going to be a bounce back season? Well, so far so good. It's really positive to see. There's been a lot of up and downs, like you can see. There's a few miscuts in here, but he's got a couple of runner ups in his last 5 events, and a lot of that does come from that total driving. He was 20. He's one of only, well, in this field, he's actually the only player ranking top 25 in both distance and accuracy. So that puts him number 1 in that total driving stat. And then there's Pendrith right there. The reason he's seen a lot of success is because he's bombing the ball out there. He's averaging, I believe, over 300, dial it back here, but 311 yards on the season, but also hitting fairways at a 66% rate and an 89% good driving percentage. So that is really good. So when you're giving yourself a lot of opportunities, if your irons are on, you're going to be scoring a lot. And that comes, that's number 1 reason why he fits the model for these long courses and why he's been doing so good this season as well. He's just gaining so many strokes off the tee. And then you got Gary Woodland, number 3. Maybe not the most accurate, but his driving kind of gives him that total driving. Same with Rasmus Højgaard, 6th in distance, 71st in accuracy. So him and Woodland kind of the same model there. Ben Griffin's up there, Tom Kim, Davis Thompson. A lot of these players, what I'm noticing is they're either really good at one or the other. That's why I really like Taylor Pendrith this week, because he's got a really nice balance. It's kind of the same with Daniel Berger. I'm not sure I'm on Berger quite yet. He's got some pretty awful course history, so he just doesn't check that box. And I'm just not completely sold on the up and down form so far. But Pendrith is one of those players. He's checking all the boxes: form, course history, stats. He's there on all of them for me. So yeah, so that's a look at some of the total driving. But yes, Bob, I will add that to the main sheet for sure.
Yeah, lots of good guys up there. Interesting to see Tom Kim that high.
Yeah, 14th in driving is a little bit surprising. 317 yards off the tee he's averaging right now, so that's very impressive. He's just a little guy.
Yeah.
But then I didn't realize Rasmus Højgaard was such a bomber. Like, he's averaging 320 off the tee so far this year. So that was a little bit surprising to me. Shane Lowry is kind of interesting to me in the sub 9K range. He's a very up and down, miscuts and then top 10s kind of player. And he's got, again, that's the same way with his course history here, is a miscut, top 25, miscut, T33, T13. But he kind of fits the model a little bit as well, just in terms of his accuracy. He may not be super long off the tee at 301.8, which is just slightly below average, but he's very accurate. And what he mixes in with that, especially, is that proximity. He is, let's just go over and look at the actual ranking. He's 1st in overall proximity, 3rd in fairway proximity, and then 4th in rough proximity. So he kind of covers that whole range. So he's definitely pops off the page there, and he's someone that I haven't highlighted yet. But at 8,800, I think he's someone that I'm going to definitely mix into my GPT builds for sure.
Yeah, definitely always like Shane.
And then some guys, if we go ahead and sort by proximity, long iron proximity, give us another look at things when we're looking at the proximity 175 to 200 and the 200 plus range. Minwoo Lee is number 1 in proximity from 200 plus yards. Seamus Power, you got Gary Woodland's popping off again. So not only can he bomb it when he has to dial it back a little bit, and I think that's why he maybe has some success at some of these. He knows when to dial it back. I think Woodland actually stands out. I know this isn't a short course by any means, but I think he stands out a little bit in terms of short courses because he knows how to dial it back, but he does have that long iron proximity in there as well. So another Jake Knapp, he's top 10 in both those proximities. Sepp Straka having a really good start to the season. Someone that at 8,000 makes a lot of sense again this week. In terms of total driving for Sepp, we are Yeah, 15th in total driving, so he's 140th in distance, but he's 8th in accuracy. And then, like I just said, he's got some good long irons in there as well. So if you're not going to be crushing it off the tee, at least be accurate hitting the fairways, and then show that you've got a good long iron game. And that's where Sepp, I think, did he play? No, he did not play the Farmers earlier this year. Missed the cut last year, but he does mixed in 2 top 20s in his 5 trips as well. So he's someone that maybe goes a little bit lower owned, but that 8K range it's a nice range. You got him and Rasmus there in that low 8K range. So I think those are 2 guys that I'm going to add to my player pool here this week as well. Anyone else that
Yeah.
stands out in terms of any of those 3 categories?
Yeah, let me try to sell you on a guy. And this kind of goes back to our you do have him highlighted, so I don't really have to sell you that hard. But uh, maybe I can sell you to push you to a green highlight. We'll go with that. So Victor Hovland coming into this year, kind of trying to get things back. This place is kind of the exact course that I would want to play Victor Hovland at. Great driver of the ball when he's on. His stats aren't going to probably line up on the sheet just because he's not had the greatest of form, but it's not been horrible, honestly, to start the year. He looked pretty good at Pebble, a place that he's played pretty well in the past, but really good driver of the ball, good iron player. Where does he struggle? He struggles around the green. Not really worried about that a whole lot here. You've got thick rough where he's played pretty well when there's thick rough around the greens to chip, because it's honestly not as hard as like a place like last year at Pinehurst. He was like my biggest fade of the week, and there was quite a few people from what I remember playing him. And it was because they were like, oh, he can putt it around the green. He can putt it around. I'm like, you don't want somebody like that around those greens with those tight mown areas and trying to putt up over ridges. It's around the green game overall. So when you get him to a place like this where he doesn't have to think, he just plunks it out. And even these first couple of days, I know it's going to be windy, but if you think about the greens being a little bit more receptive, that should make it easier for him as well around the green. So I'm just willing to take a chance on a guy who, if he is playing up to his potential, he would be in the upper nines priced. And he's obviously not playing up to his potential right now. But I'm willing to take the chance that he has a really solid week. Looks like he's somewhat turning the corner. So we'll see. But I'll definitely have my eye on him in all formats at under 8K.
He's a very interesting one for me, and I wrote him up in an article this week for Fantrax because it's a betting article. And with Victor Hovland, he took 4 months off after the Tour Championship where he finished 12th. Took some time off, but he returned to the Century and I believe he had a toe injury. Ended up 36, which was a very poor performance. Obviously trending up at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. The putter and around the green game came together a little bit, but he still lost strokes in both those areas. Now, for me, it feels like Hovland right now, he's a 6-time winner. He's proven himself. And this was my argument in terms of the betting side of things. At 50-1 right now, you can find him at 55-1. I think even some places early Monday morning had him at 60-1 for an outright win. He's won 6 times on tour, I believe. He's a proven winner. It feels, and at 7,900 on DraftKings, it just really feels like he is a buy low candidate right now. And I want to be on board now with him because when he does get that form back, I feel that he's going to be, like you said, a 9K golfer in a lot of these tournaments. Like, this isn't a super elite field by any means, but I believe he would be a 9K golfer if the form was a little bit better, if he didn't take those 4 months off. And instead of 50 to 1, you're looking at in that 20. I just want to look at the odds here. I'm going to sort this by odds here for a second. Like he's 50 to 1. I feel like eventually he's going to be kind of in that Cantley, Pendrith, Tom Kim, Sung J M in that 30, 20 to 1 range. So it really feels like a buy low, and I definitely am with you. I am on board with him right now and trying to get ahead of the game, if you will.
Yeah,
and
how about Will
in terms of
Zalatoris too? I think he fits kind of a similar in terms of, comeback guy for this year, and he's playing pretty well too, and he's similar price. I mean, he would be upper eights or something like that too if it was a couple years ago. I think he's a good option there, right in that same price range.
little more on Hovland for me. And I mean, the model that I'm looking at right now is looking at the last 24 rounds. And I know that takes Hovland back into before he took the 4 months off. But looking at those last 24 rounds in that model that I have, he's top 20 in distance in this field. He's top 20 in approach. He's top 20 in both proximity ranges, 175 to 200 and 200 plus. And he's 25th in birdie or better gain. So, I mean, scoping out a little bit and not just looking at the short term 2025 here, he definitely fits the model. So it would be Hovland over Zalatoris for me, but I agree with you that both are in kind of the same boat where it feels like a buy low on their talent and their overall upside. Hovland's overall upside obviously is winning, where a lot of guys, haven't proven themselves. I know we see a lot of first time winners and stuff right now, but he's proven himself out here on tour. So 7,900 just seems like very, very cheap for both of those guys. But for me, especially looking at Victor Hovland this week. So you don't have to sell me on Hovland. If you talk
Are we
about selling
burying
me
the
on
lead
Lincoln,
with the last week's winner?
I think so, yeah.
He's played well here. He's played well.
Oh yeah, I mean he hits on all phases. Top 20s in his last 2 trips to Torrey Pines, including a career high 15th just 3 weeks ago. And then he, like you said, he's coming off a win. If you don't know who we're talking about, Thomas Dietrich, he's 25th in total driving so far this season. He's been really good with the putter, which is always good to see someone trending that high with the putter. Is if you're making putts, I mean, you can give yourself as many opportunities as you want, but if you're not sinking them with the putter, and this week, not just for birdies, but for pars as well, are going to be just as important as looking at birdies. Because I mean, looking at the winners here, we got Harris English. He won at -8 earlier this year, -13 with Pavon last year, -13 with Homa. We're not looking at super high scores, so I personally think
And
we're
that's with
kind of
the North
somewhere in
course.
that, and that's with the North course involved, yeah. So I think we're kind of looking at that right around the -8 to -10 range. I don't
Yeah.
think we're going to get to the mid-teens, especially with a little bit of that wind in the first couple of days. I think, you're going to be looking at after maybe the leader after the first 2 rounds, maybe sitting at -5, -4, -5, and then it's a little bit nicer weather. I think they can score going into the weekend a little bit. And maybe get to that -8, -10, maybe push it -12, but I do not think we're going to get to the mid-teens.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure. Well, you know what? I might let you turn it over and we can build a couple lineups here before we take off. If anyone else has any more questions, definitely throw those up here and we can definitely answer your questions about those players. We kind of talked about those that stand out in terms of stats, current form, course history, mixed it all together and looked at those ones that kind of checked off all the boxes. One thing I didn't talk about are some, a few value play. Well, we talked about Gary Woodland, 6,600 for Woodland with his course history dates back to 2019, so before 2020. So it seems like he's one of the riskier value plays. Akshay Bhatia, he's right up there. He's 13th in his only finish here, but he's been pretty solid, consistent form. 7,100. He's someone I'd probably consider in terms of cash games this week. Other than that, what do you got going here in terms of initial build for us?
Yeah, so I picked the wrong guy here.
Ooh.
We didn't. That isn't where I was going. I meant to. That meant to be Rory. But talked about this a couple weeks ago at Pebble, and ended up because it seems like you get a lot of guys you're willing to play and you're fine with in these signature events down at in the 6K range, and it allows you to get some of these guys up top because you're not scared to click these here at the bottom, especially with the fact that there's no cut and things as well. So you've got, like you said, you got Gary, you got Knapp now, you got some other guys down here that you're willing to go to. And I think you can definitely play two of these guys at the very top. I usually, and I've talked about this that week on the show because I played 20 teams that week. And I kind of went tighter at the bottom of my pool. Like in this scenario, use the Knapp and Gary example. I would have went heavy on them. It was Lee Hodges that week down there that I went pretty heavy on. And then I spread out at the top a little bit just because, and a lot of people, I said that week, a lot of people like to do the opposite where they'll spread out at the bottom because of the variance. But this week, I just feel like we have certain guys down here, Berger's another one, that we really like. They're not going to get overly owned. So go heavy on them, get exposure to them, get 3 or 4 times the field on those guys, and then spread at the top. And any of these guys, would you be surprised if any of these guys, even if we haven't talked about them, win? I mean, Scotty, Rory, JT, Colin, Ludwig, Hideki, Cantlay. None of us would be surprised if any of those won this week. So why not spread out and play a multitude of them if you're playing multiple teams? Now, this is the first time every week that I play around with builds. So I'm just now, this is my first look at pricing and stuff as well. So, when we get to that point, so I'm just throwing in, I talked about the course fit start. This would be the course fit foursome for me. Rory, Ludwig, Gary, and Vic would be a really good start, in my opinion. And it leaves you 7,400 left. And when you look at that, you're down to, you got Adam Scott at 75, and then you're down in the low sevens to finish off with like a Grazerman or Akshay, who you've got highlighted and I like as well. You could go down to Berger for that last spot and then get up into the sevens with the Stevens or Keegan and things like that. The more we talked about it, I'm really wanting to play like 2 in that upper 7 to 8 range right there. Willie Z, Dietrich, Hovland, Sepp. I mean, what kind of form for Sepp? I mean, that's a great run that he's been on. Finau even, like you talked about. I mean, he obviously has played well here. So that range just seems to be kind of loaded from 79 to 82. So if I could play 2 of them, I would really like to. And I think this type of build would allow you to do so because you can go back down into the 6s. I mean, you could go all the way down to Knapp in this scenario too, play 2 6s, and then you're back up to 8,800, and you can play Lowry, Day, Henley, somebody in there. I would rather, if I'm playing Knapp, I kind of like the idea of him being the only 6K guy, but I could see it going both ways. Bob mentioned how many lineups did I have last week in that slate. I did, I guess it was 21 teams because I did do 20 in the $5 last week, and then I did the one $200 single entry that I built by hand. So 21 teams last week for me. But any thoughts on that construction or anything you would change in your initial thoughts on a build there? Whether the 2 up top or things like that?
I think you made a really good point. With in these fields, we normally will see a top guy win this kind of event. So getting exposure to multiple of those guys in your multi-entry builds, I think makes a lot of sense in trying to really nail that winner in your lineup. Obviously, you're going to need the winner. If you're going to be winning, you want to take down the GPP. So I'm definitely with you there, and there is a lot of options in that sub 6K range. I know there's a cut this week. It really does compare. I don't know what your thoughts are. It kind of compares to what we see at the Masters in terms of a smaller field and not very many players getting cut. So we can kind of look at maybe some lineup construction there. For me, I'm just going to flip over here to my initial build that I've got going here is Rory and Pendrith. So two 9K and up, and then an 8 and a 7 with Stevens and Lowry. That leaves us that 68.50. I'm really inclined here, like you said, to go with where is he? I can't find him here. Knapp at 6K. So I need to change this because this is my own. You throw Knapp in there, and then all of a sudden was going to bring you up to, I know I had this on my other, if you throw in Knapp in that lineup, and I've got my DraftKings lineup here, it brings you back up into that 7,700 range, which then we're looking at guys that I like. It really opens it up. You can get Keegan Bradley in there that I talked about, Harris English, who won the Farmers 3 weeks ago, Adam Scott you can get in there. So that's kind of the way I like going here right off the bat, is building one with Rory and Pendrith. And if I'm building 20 lineups, I'm probably sticking those two in at least 10 of those 20. And I'm going to mix around the other ones. In 5 lineups, I'm probably going to have a third guy that's going to be probably pretty high up in my rankings. So Sam Stevens is probably going to be that guy. But I kind of talked myself into Lowry over this show. And then I do like having that Jake Knapp minimum price guy to mix in, and any kind of lineup where I'm going superstars and scrubs. And then you talked about Woodland. He fits in there. If you don't want to go a little bit more balanced, you still want to go a little bit more stars and scrubs, throw Woodland in there, and then you're getting back up into that 8K range once again. So having 3 guys in the 8K and up range is kind of where I'm targeting this week.
Yeah, I mean, like you let off with there, as much as we like some of those guys in the, let's just call it the 9,400 to 8,500 range, like the Lowry, the Pendrith, even Fleetwood, there is a clear drop off from those guys after you cross over into those cross over from like Ludwig, Colin, JT, Rory down to those guys. So that's why I'm kind of on the, when I've got the value that I do, I kind of want to get 2 of the upper range, and that might end up making me skip a lot of those guys, to be honest with you. Like I might only have 1, maybe even 2 in a pool of 20 in that group. And they're probably not going to be very high on, because I'm going to try to play some of the rest of those guys at the top. Like a Ludwig, like I would rank them right now: Rory, Ludwig, Scotty, Colin is probably how I would go at the very top. And I want at least one of those in most every one of my lineups, if not 2. So, because I think you can do it, because you got Knapp, you got Woodland, you just got tons of options down there. Scott's only 75, Akshay, just a ton of guys that you can play. That would be and Berger is another guy that hasn't played well here for the most part, but playing pretty well right now. So that'll be an interesting one to see what people do with that, course history versus form on him. But that's it to me. I think there's a lot of value, similar to how every strong field signature event is going to be. It's going to be hardly any cut, if any. Strong value range and pricing with the limited field. Feels a whole lot like Live, Chris.
Yeah.
We won't go
I
there.
like it.
We won't go
No,
into
we won't go there.
that. No.
Before we take off here, I just want to let people know if they want to get access to these cheat sheets that we're looking at, the builder that we got on there, and all the different tools that we have, plus access to our Discord. I've listed the link above here at the start of the chat on the YouTube stream with a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to. You can get our PGA package, or you can jump in and grab an all sports package. And speaking of that all sports package, we got the Daytona 500 coming on Sunday. In NASCAR season kicking off. Content's going to start going up here shortly. I'm going to be doing a preview video once we get pricing up for all three series. Going to kind of look at some track history and stuff like that, and some favorites. But as we all know, place differential is key. This week is going to work out really well, I think, where we're going to know the starting lineup by Thursday. So we're going to be having a video on our favorite picks after the qualifying is out there as well. So we're probably going to have two videos for that. And then, yeah, we've got this all weekend. So we do cover the showdowns. We have showdown updated live stats for this event, any event that has a strokes gain, as well as our cores every morning, content in chat. So make sure to get over there and check us out if you're looking for that all sports package. We do cover multiple sports, including college basketball, college football too, but it's over. College basketball is going on right now. NHL is in a break, but we've got the Four Seasons Cup, so we might have some showdown information for that. We got NBA rolling into the All-Star weekend. I think that starts. I think the last games are Sunday, and then we have our All-Star break going into next week. We got a lot of content going for a lot of different sports right now, so make sure to get in and check us out.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
We've got we just the last note on that. We just recently added the Euro sheet, so there's no Euro event this week. They're on an off week, but we just started that last week, so excited to have that going forward.
There's
in
a live event too.
Live. I was gonna say maybe I should have not made the live joke until after you told everybody about all of our offerings. But so trying to cover as many golf tours as we can, just so there's a little bit for anybody out there, whether you're doing outright betting, PGA, DFS, which is of course the bigger one of all of them. There are not very many big DFS contests for Live or the DP World Tour, but from a betting perspective, I think those will be really helpful for people as we go forward, and always trying to expand. If anybody has suggestions or things, feel free to reach out in the Discord, and we'd be happy to talk about it with you as we try to add some things. And really excited for NASCAR to get going this weekend.
It's I also meant to ask you what your opinion was. I know Live Golf has kind of got some attention lately because obviously I thought last week was great in terms of playing under the lights. I thought that was a cool dynamic, but in terms of the USGA as well as the what is it for the Open Championship, have opened up new ways for the Live golfers to actually get into those events. So I thought that was a really good turning point for especially Live in getting into some of these majors going forward, and kind of maybe the adaptation and coming together of the PGA Tour and Live. So it's exciting times for golf. I think there's a lot less people turning away from golf now and more people jumping on board. Even with the TGL, I don't know how much of that you've watched. I thought it's pretty cool. I mean, it's definitely got some improvements with the technology and stuff like that, but just the atmosphere, the whole idea around it. I was against it for the longest time, but actually watching some of it, it's quite exciting to watch. So there's a lot going on in the world of golf right now, so it's super exciting. We're just trying to bring you as much golf as possible. So If you have any questions or, like Dane said, any suggestions at all, hit us up, and we're willing to listen to anything.
Yeah, I'm hoping throughout this year we kind of see something come together in terms of Live/PGA, because I think there's a lot of potential to do some cool things together with the two tours that maybe they can bring. I wouldn't be biased, but maybe they bring back match play. But and it has something to do with like a Live, almost like a Ryder Cup style Live VPGA. I think they could do a lot of stuff like that. Like I don't think, and of course everybody always just talks about nobody watches Live and whatever. I honestly I don't know the answer to that. What the reasoning is on the ratings being and the views not being very high at all. We'll see, I guess, how the rest of the year goes with that. Now that it is on Fox and things, but I think there's a lot of potential to see these two come together and have something pretty cool for the future of golf, because as much as I'm personally okay with the way that the guys went to Live and things, the biggest downside to me of it was that it split up golf, and that was we don't see all the guys together except a couple times a year, a few times a year now at the majors, and I think that is a shame. So
I agree.
I'm all for coming back together in some form, whether it's I would assume initially it's going to be keeping the two still separate, but doing some things together. I don't know. We'll see. But I think they're moving in the right direction on that kind of stuff, as little as we've heard about it. And hopefully they'll get something figured out going into 26 or something.
100%. Awesome.
That's all I've got.
Me too. It was good talking to golf. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Again, if you've got any questions, any more questions, you want access to the sheet, grab that link above here. It's going to get you in and either get you a PGA package or an all sports package. Get into Discord, hit me or Dane up, and we'll definitely help you out with some golf preparation, how to read the sheet, how to go about making your own models, anything you want. Hit us up in chat. And other than that, good luck this week, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck.